this is the continuation of addition of integers. This time, we'll be talking about how do we add integers with different signs. So again, in this particular section, so this would be addition of integers with different signs. Different signs. So in this particular case, we're talking about a positive added to a negative, or a negative added to a positive number. Okay, so how do we add this two integers if we have that particular case? So let's take an example. So you have positive 3 added with negative 2. So you have again positive 3 added with a negative 2. So what would be the answer? So to help us get the sum, so we use the integer chips. So positive 3 could mean you have 3 positive chips, and then an addition symbol, just the same thing as combining it with the 2 negative chips. So if you're gonna add them together, that means that I have 3 positive chips, okay, and then you have 2 negative chips. However, you can see that I have a pair of a positive chip and a negative chip, and another positive and negative chip. So at the start of this discussion, is it not that we call this one as 0 pair, or in this case 0 pairs? You have 2 pairs in this particular case. That means that value of such would be the same as 0. So essentially, what is left is just your 1 positive chip. So therefore, the answer in this particular case is positive 1. Okay. So again, you get positive 1 because you have these 2 0 pairs. So again, 2 0 pairs, the value of that is just equal to 0. So it's the same thing as they are not there. So it's just the same thing as they are not there. So let's take another example. Example 2. So you have here negative 5 added with positive 2. So again, you have negative 5 added with positive 2. So before I will write the sum there, I'm gonna use again chips. So that means negative 5. So I can represent negative 5 as 5 negative chips. So 5 negative chips added, or just combining it with 2 positive chips. So if I'm gonna combine the 2, that means that I have again negative 5 negative chips and then 2 positive chips. Okay, so you have 2 positive chips and 5 negative chips. And again, I can see some 0 pairs. Okay, so I can locate 2 0 pairs in this case. That means that you have 1 0 pair, another 0 pair. So again, value of this value is 0 because there are just 0 pairs. So that means that the answer that it gives me is just essentially 3 negative chips. So therefore the answer is negative 3. Okay, so you have there again 2 negative chips paired with 2 positive chips. So it gives you a value of 0. Again, we call them as 0 pair. So let's take another example. So how about if we have positive 7 added with a negative 10. So positive 7 plus negative 10. Again, this to represent as chips, that means that I have 7 positive chips. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Again, added with 10 negative chips. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10. So if you're going to combine the two, that means that in total you have 7 positive chips. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 10 negative chips. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9, 10. So in this particular case, you have both positive and negative chips. So if that is the case, you know that you can create some 0 pairs. So actually, you can create the 7 0 pairs here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. Again, these are your 0 pairs. And value of those is 0. So that means that the value of the 0 pairs is just equal to 0. So that means that your answer would just be the remaining 3 negative chips. So the answer is negative 3. So positive 7 plus negative 10 will give me negative 3. So let's take one more example and let's generalize what we observed based on the use of the chips. So example number 4. So how about if we have negative 4 added with positive 7? So again, they have different signs. Negative 4 added with positive 7. So what would be the possible answer? Again, to help me visualize this particular situation, I'm going to use the chips. That means that I have 4 negative chips, and then I'll be adding it with positive 7 chips. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. So if you're going to combine the two, so that means that altogether and combining the 4 negative chips with the 7 positive chips. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. And again, you should expect that if you have a negative chip combining with a positive chip, you're creating in a way some zero pairs. So in this particular case, I have 4 zero pairs. So again, these are my 4 zero pairs. So that means value of them as a whole is 0. So it doesn't affect my final value. So essentially, the answer is just given by these 3 positive chips. So therefore, this is positive 3. Okay. So maybe by now, you can see the pattern of if we're going to add integers with different signs. So again, the general rule in adding integers with different signs. Again, you have different signs. So still addition, but different signs. So when we say different signs, one is positive, the other is negative, or vice versa. Okay. So if you can observe, when you are adding a positive chip and a negative chip, the answer, essentially, the number of chips, in essence, because you can create, you're creating some zero pairs, decreases. So when the number decreases, is it not that that operation is related to subtraction? Okay. So basically, if you are adding integers with different signs, you just have to subtract the absolute value of each integer again. When you say absolute value of each integer, disregard the sign, guard sign, and we copy the sign of the bigger absolute value. Okay, so when we say absolute value, again, we are just disregarding the sign. So in essence, we're just getting the whole number. So just like in this case here, you have negative 4 and positive 7. So the absolute value of negative 4, again, the absolute value of negative 4 is just equal to 4. And the absolute value of positive 7 is just equal to 7. So you're just subtracting the two absolute values. So if you're going to subtract 7 and 4, it gives you 3. However, the bigger absolute value, so now 4 and 7, is it that 7 is a bigger number compared to 4? Again, in this case, we're just talking about the absolute value. So the final sign is the sign of the bigger absolute value. That's why we get here positive. Okay, so that's the meaning of that one. We just subtract, so the bigger absolute value minus the smaller absolute value, but we copy the sign of the bigger absolute value. So we're copying the sign of the bigger absolute value. So the operation is subtracting. So we subtract the two integers disregarding the sign. That's the meaning of getting the absolute value. So it's just like in the case as shown above. And you copy the sign of the bigger absolute value. So in this case, it's positive 7. Absolute value of positive 7 is 7. So the bigger value is 7 compared to 4. So that's why you have positive 3. So an example here, you have negative 10 and positive 7. So again, they're of different signs. So if they're of different signs, we just take the difference between 10 and 7. Difference of 10 and 7 is 3. So that gives you 3. Difference of, again, 10 and 7 is 3. But if you observe, the sign of the bigger absolute value of the two integers, which is 10, has a negative sign. So the sign of our answer is negative, is a negative. So difference of 10 and 7 is 3. So when we say the difference of 10 and 7, it gives you 3. Okay? But the sign would be coming from the bigger absolute value. So in this case, again, when we say absolute value, we are disregarding the sign. So 10 is a bigger absolute value, or negative, absolute value of negative 10 is just 10. So the sign of that is a negative value. So we copy the sign of this number here, the negative 10. So just like in this example again, you have positive 2 and negative 5. So we just get the difference. Again, we just get the difference of the absolute values. So again, absolute value of negative 5 is just 5. Then subtracted with 2, it gives you 3. But the sign would be from the bigger absolute value. So in this case, it's a negative. So that's why it's negative 3. And in our first example, again, you have here positive 3 and negative 2. So again, the sum of positive 3 and negative 2 would be the difference between 3 and 2, which is 1. And if you observe, since 3 has a positive sign, we copy that particular sign. It's positive. So the answer is positive 1. So again, it's very helpful if you forget these rules. You can actually use the integer chips, and just try to remember that a positive chip paired with a negative chip, the value of that is equal to 0. So generally, this is how you add integers. So the other things is just a combination of additions of, like, maybe perhaps you'll be given different signs and the same sign. So generally, it would be combination. You'll be given a particular item that combines these two, or that you can use these two rules here. Again, generally, you're just adding integers with different signs and adding integers with the same sign. So if they're of the same sign, the operation there is adding the numbers. okay? But adding the absolute value of numbers and copy the common sign. But for different signs, you're gonna subtract the absolute value of each integer and copy the sign of the bigger absolute value. So uh, right after you watch this video, try to answer the worksheets that will be given to you.